وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجلت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوب غافرا ولا لكبائه ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرت بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد عملي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومثالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفظعني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكم اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أعترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مطئنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وساقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذب بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد ما انطوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تعبد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مقته يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها زج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها زجيج الآملين ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولو نادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يزج إليك زجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من علمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يعمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يهرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتغلغل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تزجره زمانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فضلك في إذكه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك، فباليقين أقتوا لولا ما حكمت به من تحزيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك، لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك، أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأن تجل ثناؤك، قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما، أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي، وأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي هتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته، وكل ذنب أذنبته، وكل قبيح أسررته، وكل جهل عملته، كتمته أو أعلنته، أخفيته أو أظهرته، وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباته الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني، وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جواره، وكنت أنت الرقيب عليهم من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناسيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا، وبخدمتك موصولا، وأعمالي عندك مقبولا، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، قوي على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي في الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في البارزين، واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، واستمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أراد بسوء فارده، ومن كادني فقده، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، وعطف لي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني أثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وزمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الفاتحة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأشهد أن عليا حجة الله صلوات وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا الله أكبر أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصلي لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سميع له لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد كذلك الله ربنا الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد سميع له لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. سمعنا لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. إلهي أنت كما نحب فاجعلنا كما تحب بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. لا إله إلا الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم صل على محمد. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وأن عليا ولي الله وأن عليا حجة الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سميع له لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. لا إله إلا الله الحليم الكريم لا إله إلا الله العلي العظيم. سبحان الله رب السماوات السبع ورب الأرضين السبع وما فيهن وما بينهن ورب العرش العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سميع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله كما هو أهله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته في أمته ورفع درجته. بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. سبحان الله والحمد لله. سبحان الله والحمد لله. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سميع له لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله. أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عجل فرجهم. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عجل فرجهم. اللهم إني أسألك الراحة عند الموت والمغفرة بعد الموت والعافية عند الحساب بحق محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله وخير الأسماء الحسنى لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد. سبحان الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. لا إله إلا الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم صل على محمد.
صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيلا عزيز رحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم 2 فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب عليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون. بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون. فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلالهم على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم. وامتعظوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون. هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون. اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون. ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون. ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون. ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون. وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين. أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وظللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون. واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون. فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يروا إنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم. سورة فاتحة.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, respected elders, dear brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jamia wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumin listed on the screen as well as all other marhumin. Surah Al-Mubarak Al-Fatiha. Dua Maries is requested for all those in need here and elsewhere, as well as those listed on the screen. Let us recite together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. Ya Allah, let us now invite Sayyid Hasan Rizvi to please come forward for tonight's majlis by Muhammad wa Muhammad salawat.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا والنبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, based on the various pieces of feedback, criticisms, and suggestions that we had gotten from last week's session, we originally were only planning on covering that topic, on these monthly Clearing the Air interactive sessions. Everybody that I had spoken to had pretty much had requested that it actually be covered every single week because there was a lot of details that we need to go through. So, first of all, I appreciate everybody who offered their feedback. The critical one as well, those who raised objections to the way things were presented. All these things, inshallah, hopefully will make things more beneficial. And the hope is that those who are supportive of the ideology which we are trying to critique, that they are also hopefully tuning in, they're watching, they're listening, and that they are going to provide critical feedback. If we make a mistake, if we misrepresent, their scholars' views and things like that, we want, them to respond and say, look, that isn't correct what you said. So that way we can make sure we go. I don't want to, make a mistake in what I said, and if I do, then I want to make sure to be able to correct it in public as well. So there's a lot of information that we're going to have to go through. Now, of course, we had a topic left over from before Ramadan, pretty much 2 months ago. So what we're going to do for tonight is maybe one or two of the questions left over from last week. We'll go through that, the ones that we can try to answer. And even that, we're not going to answer it fully. We'll give a short response, but once we dedicate a specific session to it on a Thursday night, whether the interactive one or a regular one, then we'll open it up a bit more. And then after we do that, then we will jump into and finish the topic from before, which we were talking about the concept of rizq, of how rizq works in the world, the metaphysical cause and effect, and specifically how this works in terms of the malaika and the angels. So we'll close up that session tonight, and then we have a quiz at the end as well. Okay, so let's jump to Slido then. Okay. So there was a lot of them. So I'm going to start with, I'll start with this first one, right? Okay. So an example of a question raised by the speaker, this progressive, sort of liberal, non-traditional scholar that we are addressing the views about, or anybody who takes this sort of idea of, more progressive or liberal approach to Islam, said that the rules of qasr and not being able to fast while traveling still apply as there's no level of difficulty endured while traveling in the modern day. How would you respond to this? So, when we're talking about fiqhi issues, the traditional way of approaching it is that a person, a mujtahid, has to engage in ijtihad. Meaning, they first look at the ayat of the Quran regarding a mas'ala, a subject, for example, salatul qasr, right? When does salah becomes qasr? Then, of course, they look at the ahadith as well. And then they see, what's the authenticity? Are there contradictions and conflicts? How do you reconcile them? Are there certain principles in usul al-fiqh that need to be utilized here? So this is sort of the process there. Now, there are some mujtahideen that may apply this idea, right? To say that, okay, is there evidence to suggest that the idea of salatul qasr, at this whole distance, the 8 farasikh, that's usually mentioned, right? 4 back and forth, or 8 back and forth, or 4 one way back and forth, whatever we say, right? They say, look, is this the actual criteria? Is this the barometer, just the distance itself? Or is it because at that time, in the time of those Arabs, that was the sort of distance in which somebody needed to bring, let's say, items with them, right? They couldn't just travel and come back. They had to bring enough, let's say, water or supplies because it was going to be a long trip for them. So this is the approach of some scholars. They say, look, this is what we're talking about, is because this traveling distance is related to a person's daily travel, meaning it's a far type of travel, then what we do is we now take it and apply it to this day and age. Meaning this whole 28-mile or whatever, and again, it's like 14, whatever, however, ulama are a bit divided on what a farsakh means, but we average it out to about 28 miles round trip. So look, okay. They say, look, that's clearly not a long, it's not a lot of travel for us nowadays. For a lot of people, even taking a 45-minute or an hour flight is not a big deal as well, right? The question is this though. Do we have permission? Do we have any evidence in the Quran, in the ayat of the Quran, or within the words of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam themselves, which say that, look, this criteria that we're giving you about 8 farasikh is because it's regarding the amount of travel which makes people tired? Or is it something that you and I, or these certain scholars, are force-feeding into the ahadith? They're taking from the outside and they're implanting it themselves. That's the question there. And this is going to be basically every single question, every discussion we have is always going to be about this point. If somebody wants to talk about intuition or feelings or using your intellect, any of these questions that come about, the question is, look, no problem. If you want to use intellect, if you want to say that rulings change in time and place, okay, we're open to that. But you need to say, where are you, show us where you're getting the evidence from. Is Allah saying in the Quran that rulings will change based on time and place? Do we have a hadith from the Ahlul Bayt in their sunnah, in their own words, in their lives? Are they saying, yes, things will change from time to place? Are they instructing their companions who are also passing out fatwa in those same times too, right? Because they were spread out all over the Arabian Peninsula and the Islamic Empire. Were they applying it differently than, let's say, somebody else was in Medina, somebody else is in Kufa, somebody else is in Egypt? Were they applying it differently too? Because place was different and they had a different urf and custom? So we have to look to the evidence for them. And the traditional opinion, the opinion which has existed for over 1,000 years among both Sunnis and Shias, is that there is no evidence for this time and place idea. It's not there. And there are a few places, but it's because it's mentioned specifically by the Prophet and the Imams. And that's eventually what we're going to expand on and discuss in detail. For this issue though, the mujtahideen generally saying is that, look, if the Imams wanted to let us know, if the Prophet and the Imams wanted to tell us that every single place, you have to adjust your rulings based on how much distance will tire somebody out, that's the reason for qasr prayers. Okay, well, where's the words of the Imams like that? Show me some sort of proof. As the Quran says, قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. We'll take your proofs, you just have to offer it to us, that's all. And most mujtahideen, when you look at the evidence, it's not there. So again, we're saying that this is something that's coming from the outside and we're force-feeding it there. Now again, are we allowed to do that or not? Traditional scholars said, no, you're not allowed to do that because you have no proof. Now, what proof do these liberal, progressive scholars offer to say that, no, we are allowed to introduce our own time and place ideas, even though the Ahlul Bayt haven't specifically mentioned it? What's their evidence? Inshallah, in coming Thursdays, we'll address that. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Next question is, where does fitrah come into this? So last week we were talking about this idea of intuition and how can it play a role in determining what is the real Islam? What is the real idea about God that you and I should have? What is the real ahkam? Is hijab wajib or not? Can my fitrah tell me what is correct and what is morally right in this day and age? Is it going to change from time and place? Again, sort of the same question. Now, what we're going to, again, eventually do is go through every single possible definition, as we did last week, right? We said fitrah is one possible example of intuition. Your heart, your qalb is one example. Tafakkur, tadabbur, those are other examples. We said aql, right? That's another example. Common sense is another example. There's something in the science of mantiq known as wijdaniyat or fitriyat. These are also examples. We have to go through each and every one of these to say, is this what they mean by, the intuition tells us what God wants? We don't need the Quran anymore. We don't need the hadith. Our fitrah or our intuition can tell us. We'll have to go in details about that. But over here, the short answer would be this. The fitrah is something that Allah gives all of us. We are ma'soom, as they say. We are pure. We are all Muslims when we are born, right? The hadith, I believe, from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is kullu mawlud yulad ala al-fitrah. Every single child is created and born with this fitrah, this divine nature, pure from Allah. But then Rasulullah continues is that it's their parents who come and then can adjust and mess up and pollute their fitrah. And he says that they can then change their Muslim fitrah into a Christian fitrah or a Jewish fitrah. And then ulama explain that basically you can make somebody's Muslim fitrah, and if, let's say, they have atheist parents or materialistic parents, they can pollute that fitrah as well. So just because we all have a fitrah, and just because we all started off with a pure one, does not mean that can't be edited and changed and polluted. And that was our point last week. So the fitrah, if we had a pure one, then maybe it might tell us exactly what God wants. Maybe. But for the general public, for most of us, we don't know. How do we know whether we have a pure fitrah or not? Can somebody come and say, I have a pure fitrah, so I know what Allah wants? I know that He means something different from the Quran. I know that this hadith is for that time and not for this time. Right? That's a tough argument to make, right? There's a little bit of takabbur and arrogance that's there. Again, that's why we talked about this idea of egocentricity versus God-centricity. What gives somebody the right to say that I know better, that I have an insight? My fitrah is clean, but scholars for 1,000 years, their fitrah has been polluted and they got the answer wrong. Right? So it's a very tough thing that they have to come and prove, but inshallah we'll go into more detail in the coming weeks. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I think maybe we'll do one more. Okay, so this next one. Where can scholars apply intellect when understanding Quranic values, for example, abolishing of concubines and slavery? So somebody asked, again, this is all from last week. So I edited this question because the terms that were used were not family appropriate, right? So I edited this a little bit. But I think you can understand what this questioner was trying to allude to. That there are certain ahkam, there are certain rulings, there's practices of the previous prophets, of the Ahlul Bayt, where right now, you and I, when we think about them, it's very difficult to understand. Right? Just the concept of slavery itself. How is it that our prophet, our imams could have slaves, right? It's so disgusting, so immoral. How could they have done that? It's a tough thing. We've talked about it, I think, in previous sessions. Basically, you have two different choices. One choice is to say that, look, as these progressive liberal scholars will say, that morality changes. Their morality back then allowed them to do it, and it was fine. But now we have improved, our intellect has been perfected, and we have grown. Right? This whole existential human evolution and perfection. So that's why humans now know that slavery is a bad thing, but back then they didn't know that. So I'll say, okay, if that's the claim, then here's the problem you're going to run into. The problem then is that you're saying, okay, right now, our intellect is more superior than those people in the past. We know now that slavery is bad. Are you saying then that your intellect is more superior, na'udhu billah, than the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam? That they didn't know any better? There was plenty of ahkam that they never engaged in themselves. Things which were makruh, for example, right? Divorce. It's something which is allowable in Islam, and sometimes, in general cases, it's makruh. In certain cases, it's actually mustahab, right? It's a longer discussion. But the Ahlul Bayt, because of that, it's one of the most despised things in the eyes of Allah. Again, if a person doesn't go through the proper arbitration process and things like that. If somebody just uses it as a tool just to get out of marriage because they don't want to try to work on themselves with the spouse. The Ahlul Bayt, obviously, we know previous prophets, our own prophet, had to deal with very, very difficult wives. Wives that were called out by Allah in the Quran. We know this, right? There's no dispute about the history there. Everybody knows this. But never do we hear this, that no, the prophets engaged in this behavior. So they obviously knew that there were certain things which were allowable in Islam, but for them, God did not want them to engage in it, so they didn't. So our question is, okay, if right now we know that, assuming slavery is bad and nobody should do it, okay, if they knew that too, then why did they engage in it? Again, the only way that this sort of progressive liberal trend can respond is that we, na'udhu billah, know better than them and we are morally perfect. We're better than them. It's a very problematic thing. Unless they have another response, which, again, if they have, then I'm willing to listen to it, but it's going to be very, very difficult. And again, the same thing that we said before would also apply. The question is, look, when you're saying the intellect is examining Quranic values, say, okay, what's your barometer? What's your criterion to determine what are intellectual, rational, moral values? Are you saying it's because society doesn't like it anymore? or society does like something. I mean, we gave examples last week, right, of having multiple partners. You know, we said previously polygamy was something normal in society for millennia. It was normal. And in some societies to this day, it's actually seen as, in some parts in Africa, if a Muslim scholar does not have multiple wives, it's seen as makruh. It's seen like, what's wrong with the scholar? Is it because they see that as a sign of adala? They said, this means that this scholar can't be just to multiple people, right? Because they said you're supposed to be just to multiple wives if you're going to have them. So in certain societies, they expect the scholar to have multiple wives because they say this is a way we can ensure that they're adid, that they can take care of more than one individual or wife in a family. But now the rest of the Western world, for a while, said, no, polygamy is wrong, it's bad. But then now we see all of a sudden this idea of polyamory is coming out, where people are allowed to have multiple partners, and they have these open relationships, right? And I don't want to bring the whole Will Smith, Jada Pinkett stuff back in there, but I think you guys know what's going on, is that this stuff now is out in the open. So what we're saying, like, what is your actual criteria here? What determines what is good and what is bad? Is it society? If you're going to say society, which society? Right? If you talk about, again, I can go through many different examples. The whole point is this. When you say intellect, I need you to define what intellect actually means. And then, in reality, when you define that, you're going to have to show me why is it that some intellects in the East are different than the intellects, quote unquote, over here in the West. Can both of us be right? Can both of us be wrong? How are we actually going to solve these dilemmas? So hopefully again, we're going to go through this in more detail in the coming sessions. I'll leave it there, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay, so let's move on to our topic. So we'll continue with the slide of questions next week as well. And as we continue this topic of examining this idea of God centricity, right, of keeping God on top and saying that we submit to Allah, sami'na wa ata'na, versus the other side, which is egocentricity or human centricity, saying, no, I am the end-all and be-all, and I can determine what is right in the Quran, what is wrong in the Quran. I can determine what is right with the Ahlul Bayt, what is wrong with the Ahlul Bayt. These are the two sort of strains that we're trying to examine and see this progressive liberal trend. Is it actually God-centric or is it human and egocentric? So inshallah, next week what we're going to go through is, they're obviously going to offer proofs. They say, look, we can show you that Allah in the Quran wants us to utilize our intuition by ayat which talk about tafakkur, contemplation, tadabbur, reflection. Allah is telling you to think about things and reflect upon things. Use your aql, think about it. So are these ayat telling us that we have to think about stuff and then that's using our intellect, and then when we use our intellect, we'll know to change laws? Or is Allah addressing something else in all these different ayat? Inshallah, we'll start with that next week. Now let's jump back to our topic about the angels. If you can recite, salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. So today we want to go through, and again, this will be the last one, although there's many angels we could have gone through, but we want to just wrap up this topic tonight so that we can continue on with our God-centricity, egocentricity topic for the next, I don't know how long it'll take, but probably at least a month, maybe 2 months. So the last angel that we want to cover is Mika'il or Mika'il. There's two different pronunciations. In the Quran, in Surah Baqarah, ayah 98, this is the only place in the Quran where this angel is actually mentioned. And the pronunciation that's used is Mika'il. And we actually referred to this ayah as well when we talked about Jibreel alayhi salam. So Mika'il and Jibreel are mentioned side by side. And this is a point that I want you to keep in the back of your minds. That it's interesting that these two are the side-by-side sort of angels here. So, is it on the screen? Okay, Hasan, it's on the screen now. So, Allah says here, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Man kana uduwan lillah wal malaikati wa rusuli wa Jibreel wa Mika'il fa inna Allah uduwan lil kafirin. If you recall, we talked about in terms of how the Jews of that time, they had, they were testing out Rasulullah. Right? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. Because we know the Jews of that time, they were waiting for a prophet. They had in their scriptures somebody was supposed to come to their area and deliver them, right? To help them. So they were waiting, and then of course Rasulullah comes and he makes the claims. They said, okay, we'll test you out. And they tested him with knowledge of the scripture. They tested him with mu'jizat. They tested him and Rasulullah passed everything. Then they asked, okay, who brought you all these, this word, the Quran, who brought it to you? Who is the one who's giving you this wahi and revelation? They said, Jibreel. And that's when they said, no, never mind. You cannot be the prophet we've been waiting for. Many of them had deviated from their traditional rabbinical teachings, their Jewish teachings, and they had said, no, Jibreel, na'udhu billah, is an evil angel, the angel of evil and mischief. Mika'il or Mika'il, he is the one that actually brings wahi and good news. So this was the sort of argument that they would give to Rasulullah. That's why we can't trust you anymore. So Allah is addressing them right here, saying, look, whoever is an enemy to me and to any of all of my angels, to my prophets, and then he mentioned specifically to Jibreel and to Mika'il, so anyone that you talk about, then you are, right? Then this person is, then I am going to be, Allah saying, I am an enemy to these kuffar, kafirin, meaning you're hiding the truth. You know that Jibreel was one of the angels. You know about this, but you change these things over time so that now you can have an excuse to reject Rasulullah, right? That was the sort of idea. So this is the only time Mika'il is actually mentioned here, very interestingly. Now, I want to go through just some basic fada'il and pieces of information, biographical information about this angel. So we have this concept of archangels, which are known as malaika al-muqarrab or muqarrabin. Muqarrab meaning they have this qurba. They are the closest ones to Allah. Many of us know, right? It's addressed in many surahs like Surah Safat, that angels have different ranks. There's a hierarchy there. And 4 of them are the sort of ones that are on top. These 4 are who? Are Jibreel, Izrail, Israfil, and then of course Mika'il. These are the 4 archangels, or Malaika Muqarrabin. And other ulama, some of them point to a hadith from Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala that they are also, these 4 are also referred to as al-mudabbirat al-arba'a, the 4 managers. Because these 4 archangels, one of the main functions is that they have taken specific duties, they've been charged with specific responsibilities, wada'if from Allah, and they are the ones who kind of manage things in the metaphysical and physical realms. They are the ones who are in charge of these things. We've talked about, for example, death is Israel. Wahi is for Jibreel. Israfil, we didn't talk about him, and unfortunately we won't get a chance. Maybe later down the line we can. So he's in charge of more of the, end of time sort of issues, right? He's the one who blows this trumpet, who has a lot to do with Yawm al-Qiyamah, the before Yawm al-Qiyamah, after. So there's a lot of information there. And then of course, finally we have Mika'il. So what is he actually in charge of? What's he do? What does he do? So in the fada'il that they talk about, they break it down into 2 different components. They say he has specific duties and actions and interactions in the divine higher metaphysical realms. And then he has his interactions in the lower realms, the dunya basically. So what has he done in the higher realms? First, let's talk about that. They say that Jibreel and him, again, both of them are paired constantly actually. That's why some ulama say these 2 are higher than the other 2 as well. These 2 have the very, very high station. Jibreel and Mika'il, according to our riwayat, they say these were the first 2 to perform sujood when Allah had ordered the malaika and Iblis to perform sujood to Nabi Adam alayhi salam. These were the first 2. And according to some, they say this is why they had that higher rank. Others say no, the higher rank led them to be the ones who, did sujood to Nabi Adam first. Regardless, right? They had a high status. They say that there are 4 angels, these same 4 angels, these archangels, they are the ones who hold the 4 corners of the Arsh Allah, the divine throne. Each of them hold a specific pillar of that, right? Hold that, which also is representative of the Kaaba as well. And then again, what that means, it's beyond the scope of our discussion on a Thursday night. But each of these has a metaphysical representation. Like in the higher realms, what does it mean? Each angel holding a pillar of the Kaaba, which represents the divine Arsh. And then some ulama, I'll give you another clue too. We have something else which is done in 4s, in every single salah. What do we do in the 3rd or 4th rak'ah? What are we allowed to recite? Tasbihatul arba. So in riwayat, we also have this idea as well that the tasbihatul arba, right? Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. These also are representative of the 4 pillars of the Kaaba and the Arsh, which each represent the different tasbihat that the angels perform as well. Each of them are different. So again, there's a lot to go through, but I'll just give you that information so that you can digest it, and I don't know what you're going to do with it, but enjoy it. That's all I can tell you, right? Now, we have one other, this is the last thing that I want to mention in terms of the higher metaphysical duties and fada'il of Mika'il alayhi salam. And this is based on a riwayah we have from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. He's reported to have said that Jibreel is the mu'adhin for the people of Jannah, for Ahlul Jannah. He's the mu'adhin, and Mika'il is the imam for the people who recite salah in Jannah. Now again, what do you mean that there's the adhan in Jannah? What do you mean that they're praying salah? A lot of us are like, look, when I go to Jannah, I don't want to be praying namaz anymore. Like I thought I was done with that over here. Like you're gonna, it's something I have to do over here so I don't go to hell. And now over there I got to do it too. Like what kind of heaven is that? We have to understand that for the ones at the highest level of Jannah, what they're after is really they're looking for Allah. They want true ma'rifat of Allah and they want qurbatan in Allah. That's what they're looking for. They are trying their best to exemplify pure ibadah. So when they leave this realm, they're saying, Allah, my salah is weak here. I want to engage in the most purest form of salah. And that can only take place in the 7th level or the higher levels of heaven in Jannah. Over there, that's where this is representative of saying Jibreel is the one who calls you. He recites the adhan. And Mika'il is the one who leads salah. Again, you don't have to take this literally because things in Jannah are not meant to be taken literally. The ones at the lower levels of, this wine, people giving out these cups and laying on, couches. Yes, you can take that literally if you want, if that's what you're looking for, no problem. But when we're talking about these higher realms of Jannah, the whole discussion changes, right? So I'll leave that alone. If we ever get a chance to talk about what heaven actually means, we'll talk about it at some point. So this was the higher realms. Now what about the lower physical realms? Let's talk about that. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So this is what Mika'il had done or does do in the higher realms. Now what about here? How is he helping us in the dunya? What has he done before? Many riwayat, I only want to mention a few things. They say that he was one who is involved in something called the Sharh Sadr Rasulullah, the expansion of the chest of Rasulullah, which again, I don't want to go into details what that means. It's where, again, the Ahlul Sunnah have one sort of strange interpretation of what that means. And the Shia have their own sort of understanding of this light coming into the heart of Rasulullah. And they say that he was involved in that, along with Jibreel. They say that he was one of the main ones involved in helping the Muslims win the Battle of Badr. So he's a warrior to some degree as well. When Mi'raj was taking place, normally Mi'raj we think of Jibreel, right? He's the one who's taking the hand of Rasulullah and taking them to almost all the higher levels of heaven, except for the highest ones which he couldn't go to. But they say the one who brought Buraq to Rasulullah was Mika'il. He's the one who brought Buraq to Rasulullah. 2 more things we'll mention, I think. One is that he took part in the destruction of 2 different people, aqwam, or qawm, in previous nations. One is Qawm Lut, the people of Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah. Mika'il took part in that destruction of that civilization, as well as the people of Fir'aun. He took part in that destruction. Now again, I want you to keep this thing in mind as well too, because this will put a question mark on our mind when we talk about what is the role, the overall role of Mika'il. The last thing that I'll mention is that he was the one also working with Jibreel on Laylatul Mabit. Laylatul Mabit is what? If you remember, is the night when Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Right? It's literally, this Laylatul Mabit is the night of slumber or sleeping or staying. This is when Amir al-Mu'mineen slept in the bed of Rasulullah, right? To allow him to go in the middle of the night and to leave, because the Quraysh, obviously, remember, you all know the story, right? You guys paid attention to Madrasa, I'm sure, right? So yes, the Quraysh wanted to assassinate the Prophet. Jibreel came and informed the Prophet. Then the order came, Rasulullah ordered Imam Ali to go and sleep in his bed. Of course, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the only one who was worthy, accepted and slept in the bed of Rasulullah, right? Now, interesting hadith that again comes from Rasulullah. So I'll skip the Arabic, I'll just go to the English. Allah told Jibreel and Mika'il, He said, I have made both of you brothers. And I have to decree that the life of one of you is going to be shorter than the life of the other. So either Jibreel is going to live longer or Mika'il. He said, which one of you prefers that your brother lives longer? Like, so it's a tough choice to make here, right? So both of them did not want to die. Or again, we're talking about angels. Whatever death means, again, longer conversation. But, who wants to basically stay with Allah longer, if you want to put it in that way? So obviously they both all wanted to, selfishly, of course, which makes sense. They all want to be with Allah longer, so neither of them wanted to be with Allah for less amount of time. So they kept saying, I don't want to go. And he says, well, I don't want to go either. So then what happens? Then Allah says, it's sad. Don't any of you want to be like my wali and my wasi, Ali ibn Abi Talib? Somebody who I have made him the brother of my Rasul, the brother of my Nabi, the brother of my Prophet. And the Prophet preferred that Ali is the one who sleeps in his bed. The Prophet made that preference over there, sacrificing his life for him. Both of you have, now need to, based on this, descend to earth and protect him from his enemies. So they say Jibreel then descended. He came to, Imam Ali was sleeping in the bed of the Prophet. He came to the head of Imam Ali when he was sleeping, and Mika'il comes to the feet of Imam Ali and offers the protection over there. And they say in this hadith as well, this is when Jibreel comes and says, Bakhin, Bakhin, Ibn Abi Talib. Like, congratulations. And it goes on and on. Allah is proud of you in front of the angels, meaning we don't have a status like Ali ibn Abi Talib. We were the ones who were selfishly saying we don't want to go. But you, Ali, you came forward and gave your life up for Rasulullah. What a fadaya that even the angels do not have. And of course, I think I'll have to skip the rest for lack of time. The most notable trait of Mika'il is what? Now, every single angel that we've talked about has had one specific main attribute, one kind of assignment that they had. For Jibreel, right, the one on top, he's Malikul Wahi. He's the one in charge of revelation. And we also said, according to the philosophers and the Urafa, he's in charge of ilm and knowledge and ma'rifah as well, right? Then we have Israel, who is the Malikul Maut, right, in charge of death. Israfil we didn't talk about, but again, usually in charge of qiyamah or trumpets and things like that. What about Mika'il? They say he is the Malikul Rizq wa Rahmah, the angel of sustenance, of rizq, and rahmah, of mercy. Somebody that definitely we need to pay attention to. And a part of this rizq and rahmah extends to just about everything that you and I need in our lives. Not just money and health and things like that. Even things like raindrops. They say Mika'il is the one who is in charge of counting every single drop and making sure it goes down and descends to wherever it needs to go to make sure the drops that descend go to every single place that deserves it. Every place that needs that rahmah of rain, it'll go there. Likewise, any place that needs thunder and lightning, he's also in charge of that as well. Even the trees, every single leaf that's on a tree, if it's supposed to grow, Mika'il is the one who gives the order. If it's supposed to fall, wilter, and die, he's also the one that gives the order for this as well, on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of this rizq, we all think, all of you who recite Salatul Ghafayla, think about those ayat that are recited there. This is what it's talking about. Allah knows all these things. Every single thing is calculated. For what point? What purpose? For the purpose of our kamal, for our perfection. Mika'il is divvying up and delegating the various levels of rahmah and mercy for you and I. If you and I want to become perfect, insanul kamil, if we are trying to live in the shadow and follow the footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and we want to be just like rahmatun lil alameen, then the only way we can do that is if we understand the role of Mika'il in divvying and delegating out that rahmah as well. And that's why we see his name being mentioned in many different places. So I'm just going to end with this because we are out of time. He's even specifically mentioned in Dua Dawood, among many other du'as. So this will be the last point that we mentioned, where over there it says, Allahumma salli ala Mika'il. So this is the other place where we have the other pronunciation, right? In the Quran it said Mika'il. In many riwayat it says Mika'il. So Allah, send your salah, send your mercy, your rahmah to Mika'il. Malik rahmatik, the angel of your rahmah and your mercy. Wal makhluqi li ra'fatik, the one who's been created to show your ra'fa, your kindness, your gentleness, the one who's settled with us, the one who really takes care of us, almost like a motherly sort of feature. وَالْمُسْتَغْفِرِ الْمُعِينَ لِأَهْلِ طَاعَتِكَ. And he is the one who is going to go and seek forgiveness, who's going to perform istighfar for you and I, and assist whoever is performing the ita'at of Allah. Meaning we have a formula here too. He's the one who's bringing down mercy. He extends and brings down Allah's kindness. But one of the conditions seems to be in this dua is that, look, he'll also seek forgiveness for us, assuming that you and I are the ones who are performing the ita'ah and obedience of Allah. Obedience of Allah is what allows us to increase in our mercy, to increase in our rizq. This is how it works. So when we engage in this, when we understand the role of the angels, know that they are only going to work based on the rules that they've been given. So if Allah is telling them, hey, if these people are obeying you, if they're sincere, if they're trying, if they're learning, even if they make mistakes, no problem, but increase their mercy, increase their rizq, widen their rizq. So Mika'il in this sense has a very, very special station in the place of the Ahlul Bayt and in the way that we engage in this. Now again, this discussion that we had about this was all about resolution and determination, if you remember. And we talked about this because if we want to be resolute and determined to make decisions and try to change our lives, we should understand that there are metaphysical causes and effects in play. We talked about all the angels and we've ended now with Mika'il. He's the angel of rahmah, of rizq. The way that we can, in a sense, seek his tawassul, his intercession, is through the ita'at of Allah. The real obedience of Allah. Real obedience which comes from the way Allah commands it. Not the way that you and I want to do it. Not the way that our intuition tells us that we have to do it. But the way that Allah specifically has laid down in the Quran, in the riwayat, and through the tradition of our ulama for hundreds and 1,000 plus years of scholarship. So this will be closing our discussion on the resolution and determination and how we can understand metaphysical cause and effect, the biography of some of these angels. If we get time and Allah provides tawfiq, we'll try to continue whenever we're finished with our next discussion on God's centricity and egocentricity, inshaAllah ta'ala. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. They say, we talked about how Mika'il is the angel of rahmah. But we also know that he was involved in the destruction of Qawm Lut and Fir'aun, the people there. How is that merciful? Somebody might ask. Say, look, the way that you and I think about mercy is that it's always kindness, it's always loving, it's always a soft touch. It's not the way that Allah views his mercy. Sometimes the way that mercy needs to be shown is with a tough fist. We say harsh love. When people have disobeyed Allah generation after generation after generation, then the adhab of Allah comes. And this adhab is not Allah angry saying, oh, I don't like you anymore, I'm angry, I'm going to punish you. No. The idea is that, look, you have become, and this actually, if you pay attention, we talk about the idea of la'na, same exact idea. You have become so disconnected from the mercy of Allah, if you continue to live on this earth, the only thing you'll do is create more and more hellfire for yourself. So the most merciful thing that Allah can do for a person like this, who's mal'oon, who's disobeyed the prophets and disobeyed the imams, is then to take them away and bring them to the next realm, bring them to the next dimension. If they stay here, they're going to continue in their sin. If Allah ends that and takes them away from this dunya, then they'll move on to barzakh and maybe be purified there, in their grave, in barzakh or on Yawm al-Qiyamah, right? This is actually a type of mercy. Hellfire itself is actually a mercy according to our ulama. It's not punishment. Punishment itself is a mercy. They say the whole idea of punishment is for you and I to get purified. That's the point of it. Not so that because God is some angry person with a whip and whipping us there. No, he says, I want you to go to Jannah. I'm giving you constant excuses. I'm saying recite this dua, go for this ziyarah. Recite this, come and pray jama'ah. Angels will come and pray for forgiveness. He's giving us all of these chances. He doesn't want us to go to hell. Allah's not this, God of hellfire and brimstone. And this is where we see that same love and mercy manifested by Imam Hussein in Karbala. Because they say a companion saw him on the night of Ta'asuwa, the night of Ashura. They say that they say he was crying, according to some narrations. When he came out, his companion saw him and said, Yabna Rasulullah, why are you crying like this? He said, I'm confused. Is it because you are fearful of the vast army that's in front of you? Is that what scares you? Is that why you're crying? Are you afraid of losing? Are you afraid of the blood? What's happening? And Imam Hussein gives the example of somebody who is truly the descendant of Rahmatul lil Alameen. He says, no, I am crying. I'm shedding tears because it's because of my presence here in Karbala. Because of me being here, all of these individuals, these soldiers of Yazid and Umar ibn Sa'd and Ibn Ziyad, because of them being here and fighting against Haqq, fighting against the deen of Islam, fighting against me, they are going to go to Jahannam. I am the cause of them, unfortunately, to go to hellfire. And Imam didn't want that. This is the way that our heart should be melting like this. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا لقضائه وتسليما لأمره صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Let's move on to our Slido quiz, inshallah. Okay, so it's been a while. So assalamu alaikum to everybody. We have Amir, Malaika, Rais, Mika'il, HIC member only, Edmonton, Diuji, let's see, Mujtaba, specialists. There's another DOG, there's a Mujahid. And who else jumped in? Okay, because we're over time, I think we should get started right away, inshallah. Who is one of the archangels, Mala'ikatul Muqarrab? Munkar, Nakir, Israfil, Istabril, or all of the above? Munkir, sorry. Who is one of the Mala'ikatul Muqarrab or Muqarrabin? These archangels, right? Ahsant, right? Israfil is one of the four. Istabril doesn't exist. There's such an angel as that. Yeah. Who blew Allah's ruh into the womb of Bibi Maryam alayha salam? Was it Jibreel, Israfil, Mika'il, or Ababil? Most of you remember, although this was almost 2 months ago, but it was Jibreel, again, somebody who's very connected to Allah, who brings down this wahi, and even the ruh of Allah comes through Jibreel to the womb of Bibi Maryam alayha salam. Ahsant. Good job. Okay. Mika'il is the angel of what? Rizq, rahmah, rain, lightning, or all of the above? What is he the angel of? Malik al-what? Most of you, I think the vast majority of you got it, all of the above, right? Because rain, lightning, these are just examples of the rahmah of Allah as well. Ahsant. Finally, what does a funambulist walk on? Broken glass, a tightrope, fire, or water? A funambulist. Yeah, the answer is a tightrope. Very good. Okay, let's see. Who took first place tonight? Specialists, once again. Well, 23 seconds, really good. Hey Baby, with also 4 out of 4. And 55 seconds, SSP, also 4 out of 4. 57 seconds, only 2 seconds behind. Fayyaz, good job, 4 out of 4 also. Also only a few seconds behind, 102. Mika'il, not bad. I think you needed a bit more mercy and risk today. You missed one question, but 36 seconds, so at least you were quick. Ahsant. Okay, so as I said, we'll continue our topic now, or restart this new topic, I guess. Now we said Every month we're going to do the sort of interactive one, but 3 Thursdays out of the month will be sort of this normal monologue format that we have. I also want to, I should have given this disclaimer before, and I'll mention it next week as well. If you have any questions or responses in the middle of the lecture, I guess this is pretty much only for the guys, but I guess sisters you can try as well through Slido. I have no problem with you interrupting and responding. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Right? I don't take offense to that. You can interrupt. I don't consider that aggressive at all. You can stop, and if there's a point that's made you want clarification on, mention it in the middle of the lecture and discussion. There's no problem with that. And even I would prefer that because it adds more to a kind of dialogue format. For those of you who signed up, remember the Mizan course on free will and predestination is Saturday and Sunday. If you have not signed up and you still are interested, please let me know first before trying. We may be able to squeeze you in, but please let me know before you do. For those of you who signed up for childcare, make sure that you are bringing your own snacks for the children as well. For all of you who have been before, you know that it's going to take place in the ladies' hall. If you have any questions about the course, please let me know and message me before that. So we'll see you all for that course, Saturday and Sunday, inshallah ta'ala. Don't forget, we've resumed our Sunday Fajr program. 6 a.m. is the Jama'ah Salah. We'd love to see you all there for our Jama'ah prayer. Then our discussion on Tazkiyat al-Nafs, self-building. And then we have breakfast and then an open discussion and conversation. So we'll see you all for hopefully one, if not all of these sessions. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Ahl Baytihi at-Tayyibin at-Tahirin.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثار والوتر الموتور أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وعمرت بالمعروف ونحيت عن المنكر وآتاك الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرضيت به يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المتحرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك مدلهمات ثيابها وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الهادي المهدي وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والأروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا أوشد الله ملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله عني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم مؤكن بشرائع ديني وخواتم عملي وكلبي لكلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبه صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله السلام عليك يا ابن الأمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم لعن الله أمة كتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه، السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأوداءه، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصح، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله بأبي أنتم وأمي تبتم، وتابت الأرض التي في حادفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوسيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أول الكون الإسلام وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقوهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. ولعن الله أمة كتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامل الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخي المجيب إلى طاعة الرب الراغب فيما زهد فيه غير من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل، وألحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء السلطان أبا الحسن مولانا علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفينا وشفي والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان سيدي الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله لك ما وعدك من النصر والزور الأمن جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته مع الصلوات. سورة مباركة الفاتحة.